My name is Denise Huskins, and I'm getting match. Otherwise, fine. My first concert with Bethany and her mom, Blink-182, Bad Religion. Earlier today, there was a plane crash in the Alps. 150 people died.
On the afternoon of March 24th, 2015, police received a call that would launch one of the most controversial investigations in California history. A man reported that his girlfriend had been kidnapped from their bedroom during the night. Authorities arrived promptly and went directly to the apartment. Once inside, officers found themselves facing a confusing scene. A window screen near the back door had been broken, and the door lock showed signs of tampering, indicating a possible break-in. The second-floor bedroom was in complete disarray with blankets and sheets scattered across the bed. On the floor, investigators found strange items, including swimming goggles sealed with tape and an empty bottle of cough syrup. But what caught everyone's attention was a square area on the bedroom floor marked with red tape. Inside this square, a chair had been positioned, apparently prepared to face something. Strangely, a camera had been positioned directly in front of the chair, but it was disconnected and not connected to the internet, apparently serving no purpose beyond appearances. Investigators found no fingerprints, no DNA, no evidence of a struggle at the scene. Neighbors later told police they hadn't heard any screams or disturbances that night, deepening the mystery. The boyfriend's account only made the situation more bizarre. He said he woke up suddenly in the middle of the night to the beam of a flashlight. Disoriented, he saw a red dot moving across his chest, which instantly made him think of a firearm laser sight and filled him with fear. His first instinct was to protect his girlfriend, but before he could react, a masked man pointed a weapon at his head and ordered him to restrain his girlfriend's hands and feet with zip ties provided by the intruder. After he followed the instructions, the intruder also restrained him. The man then placed swimming goggles over their eyes, sealing them with tape so they couldn't see. He said they were forced to give up their bank cards, PIN numbers, social security numbers, and their phones. The kidnapper used the phones to send messages to their employers, saying they were sick and wouldn't be coming to work. The situation became even more disturbing when the intruder forced both of them to drink an entire bottle of medication, believed to be the cough syrup later found in the apartment. The sedative effects of the drug soon caused them to lose consciousness. The boyfriend stated that after passing out, he was moved to a chair positioned inside the red tape square, and when he woke up later, the goggles had been removed. The intruder warned him not to leave the tape square, threatening that his girlfriend's life would be in immediate danger if he did, gesturing toward the disconnected camera. The kidnapper claimed he was watching his every move, using this to intimidate him further. He then placed headphones on him and played relaxing music, a disturbing contrast to the danger of the moment. After delivering his final warnings, the kidnapper took the girlfriend downstairs and disappeared. Still dazed by the effects of the drugs, the boyfriend remained inside the square for several hours before finally falling asleep from exhaustion. Only the next afternoon did he wake up, free himself from the zip ties, and finally contact police. The officers who questioned him were perplexed by his strange account of the kidnapping. The details seemed illogical, leading them to doubt the credibility of his story. The idea of drawing a square on the floor and forcing him to remain inside felt theatrical, as if the kidnapper had been inspired by old Western films and imagined he was someone important, especially since he had stayed there for more than 10 hours without moving. Investigators remained skeptical, with the main question being motivation. Why would a kidnapper go to such extreme measures? While he tried to convince them his story was true, a message suddenly arrived on his phone. It was from the kidnapper demanding ransom. "See, I wasn't lying," he insisted. However, the amount, $11,200, seemed oddly specific. Regardless of the amount, officers found it strange that the kidnapper would request such a precise sum. This raised suspicions that he might be involved somehow, perhaps having harmed his girlfriend and then staged the situation to deflect blame. He vehemently denied any involvement, stating he had nothing to do with her disappearance. "How could I have sent a message to myself right in front of you?" he argued. However, the experienced detectives weren't convinced, aware that text messages can be scheduled in advance. The interrogation lasted hours. He was subjected to a polygraph test, questioned repeatedly, and lawyers were consulted. However, the investigation produced no definitive answers. At the same time, another strange development occurred. A local newspaper received a voicemail from a woman claiming to be the missing girlfriend. She said she had been kidnapped but was still alive, offering personal details to prove her identity, including her favorite band from her first concert and the name of her high school boyfriend. Despite the content, her voice sounded calm and controlled, as if she were describing someone else's suffering rather than her own. This composure only deepened police suspicions as they questioned how someone supposedly being held captive could remain so composed. Investigators then began talking to co-workers and friends of the couple. What they discovered was troubling. Both were physical therapists at the same local hospital, and even more surprising, the boyfriend's ex-fiancée also worked there. He and his ex-fiancée had previously been engaged and planned to marry, but the relationship ended after she betrayed him. Even after the breakup, they continued working together and seeing each other at times. Despite being in a relationship with his current girlfriend, it appeared he hadn't completely severed ties with his ex-fiancée. Adding to the confusion, he remembered that during the kidnapping, the masked man repeatedly asked for names, and at one point even referred to him by his ex-fiancée's name. This raised the possibility that the kidnapper may have intended to target his ex-fiancée, but mistakenly kidnapped the wrong person. Even with this new detail, police remained convinced there was no genuine kidnapping, but rather a love triangle that had gotten completely out of control. Investigators hypothesized that one or more individuals had staged the entire incident to eliminate a romantic rival or inject drama into their lives. Although official searches continued, including the use of search dogs and the distribution of flyers, suspicion increasingly centered on the boyfriend. He continued to defend his version of events and maintained his innocence. But after hours of interrogation, officers began to grow impatient. By law, they could hold him for up to 48 hours without filing charges, so they chose to wait. Although he wasn't dressed in a prison uniform, he received limited food and water and was kept in a small cell under constant surveillance. Then came unexpected news. The girlfriend had been found alive. Reports revealed she was discovered in Huntington Beach, more than 400 miles from the reported kidnapping location. Although this might have seemed like good fortune, her sudden reappearance only increased suspicions regarding the boyfriend. In most cases, kidnappers abandon victims in isolated locations to delay discovery, not in populated areas where help could be obtained quickly. In this unusual case, the kidnapper had inexplicably left her in an alley near her parents' house. When police located her, her wallet, money, and credit cards were completely untouched, directly contradicting the boyfriend's claim that the kidnapping had been financially motivated. Even more enigmatic, no ransom had ever been demanded or paid, leaving investigators wondering why the kidnapper had released her. She told authorities that after being taken, her eyes were blindfolded and she was taken to a small, quiet house with windows completely blocked by cardboard, creating a claustrophobic and sinister environment. She reported that the kidnapper, dressed in a black hooded sweatshirt, assaulted her while she was inside the house. They remained there for almost 2 days before the kidnapper instructed her to take cough syrup, placed the tape-patched goggles over her eyes again, and transported her somewhere while she was groggy and disoriented both by fear and the sedative effects of the medication. She couldn't estimate how long they had been driving, but at some point the kidnapper told her to count to 20 and then open her eyes. When she did, she found herself near her parents' house, the kidnapper apparently having disappeared as abruptly as she had been taken. Police found her account even more difficult to believe than his. They demanded she submit to a complete medical examination, focusing especially on evidence of the alleged assault. Surprisingly, the examination revealed no physical injuries, and no traces of male DNA were found on or inside her. She tried to explain this anomaly by suggesting that, during the assault, the kidnapper's genitals had seemed strange, as if they weren't real, possibly some kind of device, which added an even stranger dimension to the case. This detail led investigators to question whether the kidnapper had been a man at all. As doubts grew, police began to consider the possibility that she may have left home voluntarily and invented the entire story to avoid the consequences of her actions. The situation seemed almost absurd, a kidnapping with no apparent motive, no ransom demand, and no real harm done, in which the kidnapper kept her captive for 2 days with no apparent objective, almost as if they were playing the role of a bizarre modern-day Good Samaritan. She refused to take the polygraph test that police insisted on administering. She exploded in anger, exclaiming, "I'm the victim here. "Why are you harassing me instead of finding my kidnapper?" Her emotional outburst only intensified the officer's suspicions. After all, why would an alleged victim resist cooperating with an investigation unless there was something to hide? Soon after, police held a press conference. The chief, visibly frustrated, told reporters that the entire case appeared to be a hoax. He accused the couple of wasting police resources and orchestrating an elaborate fake kidnapping for attention. Both were formally accused of fraud and misuse of public resources. Overnight, what had been respected therapists were transformed into notorious figures. Their careers were suspended and reputations severely damaged. The local community turned against them, with many drawing comparisons between their story and the plot of a blockbuster film, further consolidating their fall from grace. But the story didn't end there. 8 days after they were formally accused, a small-town newspaper received a mysterious email. The sender claimed to be the real kidnapper, mocking the police for being so easily fooled and warning they intended to continue targeting others. Attached to the message were 2 photographs, one depicting a toy weapon with a laser pointer taped on, and another showing a corner of a room where the windows were completely covered with cardboard. These details were striking because they had never been disclosed to the public and were known only to the victims and the investigators who had handled the case, many of whom had years of experience in law enforcement and journalism. The newspaper editor noted that the email was written with an unusually precise legal style, much more meticulous than what would be expected from an ordinary person or even from 2 medical professionals. Despite the convincing nature of the evidence, police refused to confirm or acknowledge the authenticity of the email. Suspecting the email might be a distraction orchestrated by the couple, authorities argued that since they had legal representation, it wasn't impossible for someone to draft the message on their behalf. 3 months passed and the complex legal proceedings regarding the alleged fake kidnapping and confirmed fraud charges continued dragging on. Then, less than 80 miles from the location where she had allegedly been kidnapped, police were called to respond to a home invasion and attempted kidnapping. When officers arrived to investigate, they found something eerily familiar: swimming goggles sealed with tape. Given the high-profile nature of the previous case, detectives initially suspected a copycat, someone imitating the previous method of blindfolding victims. However, as they spoke with the families of the new victims, they were surprised to discover striking parallels between the 2 incidents, suggesting a much more deliberate and sinister pattern than anyone had anticipated. This time, the victims were a family of 3, parents in one room and their young daughter in the next room. In the middle of the night, the father was awakened by the glow of a flashlight, just as in the previous case, and noticed a red laser dot moving across his chest. A tall man wearing a black hood pointed a weapon at the father's head and demanded he restrain his wife's hands and feet with zip ties. Each detail seemed to mirror the previous incident. However, there was one crucial difference. The father refused to obey. Instead, he fought back with determination, grabbing a table lamp and striking the intruder in an attempt to defend his family. The mother quickly took refuge in the bathroom while the father shouted for her to get a weapon. Although there was no firearm in the house and neither parent had any experience using one, this chaotic response represented a drastic departure from the previous case in which the victims had been forced to comply. The bluff worked, scaring the intruder into fleeing from the house. The father chased him outside, glimpsing the man driving away in a white car. It was only then that the parents discovered their daughter had been restrained in her room, her hands and feet tied and her eyes covered. It appeared the intruder's plan was to subdue the parents first and then kidnap the child. Fortunately, the parents' quick thinking and courage prevented what could have become a tragic outcome. Although the family was released, reports indicated the father was of Asian descent, inferred from the intruder's hasty withdrawal. Unlike the previous kidnapping case, this crime scene had not been meticulously cleaned. Police recovered the attacker's DNA from the bedside lamp and discovered a suspicious Samsung phone near the door, providing the first concrete evidence that could potentially identify the perpetrator. The phone was registered in the name of a man from California named Matthew Muller. Police managed to recover deleted text messages and photos from the device, including the $12,000 ransom demands sent to the girlfriend using location data linked to when the ransom message had been sent. Investigators tracked Muller to a vacation cabin he owned. Upon arriving, they noticed a white car parked outside, matching the description given by the father in the second case. Without hesitating, officers entered the property and found Matthew sitting calmly in the living room with his hands raised, saying, "You finally found me." He offered no resistance and cooperated fully during his arrest. Inside the cabin, police discovered a room with windows sealed by cardboard, matching exactly both the photos from the mysterious email and the previous description. They also recovered a replica weapon, tape-sealed swimming goggles, zip ties, and a bottle of cough syrup mixed with sedatives, all found in Matthew's car, directly linking him to the previous incidents. Investigators discovered a crucial piece of evidence, a blonde hair strand tangled in one of the zip ties. And whose hair was it? None other than hers. Even more damning, data from Matthew's car confirmed he had been near her apartment on the night of March 24th and near her parents' house 2 days later, perfectly coinciding with the timing of her kidnapping and release. All the evidence now strongly indicated that she and her boyfriend had been telling the truth from the beginning. However, when police showed Matthew's photo to the couple for identification, both insisted they had never seen him before and showed no hostility toward him. They were completely confused, struggling to understand how they had gotten involved in something so bizarre and terrible. The pressing question remained: why had Matthew committed such shocking and calculated acts? The answer seemed to lie in his past. Police investigations revealed that Matthew came from a wealthy family. His father owned a large accounting firm in California, ensuring Matthew had enjoyed financial security from a young age. Despite this privilege, he didn't squander his inheritance. After finishing high school, he enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps, where he trained and worked as a mechanic. During his military service, his superiors praised him for his intelligence, precision, and strong work ethic. After leaving the Marines, Matthew was admitted to Harvard Law School, where he graduated with honors and became a licensed attorney. This background helped explain why the extortion email sent to the newspaper had been written so precisely and in such a legally sophisticated manner. However, in 2012, a female intern at the law firm where Matthew worked accused him of harassment, a serious allegation that hinted at something darker, a more controlling side beneath his impeccable exterior. The case persisted for more than a year before Matthew chose to settle privately, paying the intern a substantial sum. However, during the legal proceedings, his deposition was leaked, revealing that Matthew harbored deviant desires but lacked the physical means to act on them without tools to facilitate the harassment. This revelation destroyed his professional and personal reputation. His wife, to whom he had been married for 2 years, used the opportunity to divorce him, leaving him socially and emotionally isolated. After the scandal, Matthew left the law firm and allowed his license to lapse, effectively ending his legal career. Later, he attempted a career in sales, but was soon fired for poor performance. The shadow of the harassment lawsuit hung over him, ruining his life and ambitions. Although he could have lived comfortably without working, Matthew's resentment grew. He blamed the intern for destroying his career. This anger, initially directed at his ex-wife, soon expanded into a broader and more dangerous fixation on women in general. Matthew came to view the world as unfairly balanced in favor of women, believing that both the legal system and public opinion invariably sided against men. This perceived injustice fueled his desire for revenge, leading him to prove that common assumptions about power and vulnerability could be wrong. Over the past 2 years, more than 30 home invasions had been reported throughout the San Francisco Bay Area. However, almost all the women who reported these crimes were considered mentally unstable, their allegations ignored or ridiculed. Only 2 cases were ever formally filed, quickly buried among countless other complaints. Over time, Matthew's desire for humiliation evolved. Targeting women alone no longer satisfied him. He extracted even more pleasure from embarrassing men in front of their partners, not just causing harm, but aiming to completely ruin them. It's likely that without the courageous resistance of the family who fought back, Matthew's Machiavellian plans would have escalated even further. His arrest ultimately put an end to a reign of terror that could have grown much more destructive. Matthew's wealthy parents spared no effort trying to protect him, hiring the best defense attorneys and even a renowned psychologist who would argue he suffered from severe mental health problems, possibly even a split personality. However, despite all these efforts, Matthew made an unexpected choice. He decided to plead guilty to all charges. In his own mind, he had achieved his goal. He had destroyed public trust in the police and judicial system, and even in women, leaving a trail of fear and confusion. Matthew was sentenced to 40 years in prison for multiple offenses. As for the couple, the fraud charges against them were formally dropped just 2 days after his arrest. The city police department issued a public apology, and the complete details of the case were finally released, clearing the couple's names and resolving the old mystery surrounding the bizarre and terrible events. It turned out the entire narrative about a love triangle was nothing more than media speculation. In 2018, after a lengthy civil process, the couple and the police department reached a settlement, receiving $2.5 million in compensation for the emotional and reputational damage caused by police mismanagement of the case. After enduring so much turbulence, the couple found a measure of happiness, marrying in September 2018. A year later, they welcomed their first daughter, followed by a second daughter in 2022. Today, the family of 4 lives a quiet life in a small town, having finally overcome the darkness and distressing chapter that once defined their lives. If you found this case fascinating and appreciate thorough investigative coverage of cases where the system failed the victims, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Classified Crimes. Because here we don't just tell stories, we uncover the truth that others tried to bury, and the truth is always darker than you imagine.